Okay.
Thank you, Senator.
What should America do about Ukraine and the crisis with Russia? Should America get involved?
I think we ought to do everything we can to help the Ukrainian government, the military, and the citizens defend themselves. I'm glad that we finally have gotten rid of Nord Stream 2. That needs to be permanent. That Nord Stream 2 never happens. We've got to get back to making this country energy independent so we can be supportive not only of our own economy but economies around the world, our allies. On top of that, we got to do everything we can to make it. From everything on top of that, what we ought to be doing is making sure Putin's held accountable. I'm glad that we're doing sanctions against Putin. We ought to keep doing it. I think we ought to provide whatever resources we can to make sure they can defend themselves.
We should give weapons to Ukraine?
I think we should continue to give weapons to Ukraine.
Should we restart building the Keystone XL to help America?
We got to do everything. We got to do the Keystone. We got to allow more drilling safely in this country. Thanks, everybody.
Yanky, Pollak here for Rebel News at CPAC in Orlando, Florida, where the Conservative Conference is taking place. So, you've been following the Canadian truckers, and what do you think about it in general and Justin Trudeau crushing it?
I'm so proud of what the Canadian truckers were able to do. That Freedom Convoy is exactly what we need to see more of across the country, across the globe. It's standing up against these authoritarian figures like Justin Trudeau, and it's making sure that what we do is stand for freedom, for medical freedom, for individual freedom, against these ridiculous vaccine mandates that have been harmful to our workers.
And what do you think about Biden stopping the Keystone XL, which is now causing issues with America not being energy independent and can't be as strong against Russia?
Well, right now, I think America is in such a weakened position because of the mere fact that we've gone from being energy independent under Trump to energy dependent under Biden. And I think it's been destructive for our economy. I think the mere fact that Biden's first action was to stop the continuation of building the Keystone pipeline, it's because the left is obsessed with climate change. That's their religion. And yet what you're doing is that you're hurting workers, you're hurting the economy, and you're hurting our ability to stay strong. When we are energy independent, we are strong from a national security standpoint.
Oh, no, I ride with the convoy, but, Trudeau signed that thing, even though they backtracked on it. I just want to see what's coming next with it, because I think people should keep on fighting. And some people going against it in America, saying we shouldn't do it in America. Some people think we should. I say screw it all, burn it all down.
Tell me, how's voter registration been going? You've been doing it since 2017? When did you start?
Well, I'm very disappointed because, people used to say Scott Presler, was the king of voter registration and bringing people to the Republican Party, but now it's kind of Joe Biden. Joe Biden is making it exceptionally easy to register new Republican voters with his crisis at the border, his crisis in Ukraine with inflation, gas prices, fentanyl, illegal immigration. These are the things that are resonating with voters and why they're voting Republican. And to give you some ideas, because I have a national perspective, I visited 28 states in 1 year. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there are 14,000 fewer Democrats registered to vote than there were 2 months ago. We're gaining in Pennsylvania. Right now, we're at CPAC in Orlando, Florida, right? And for the first time in history, this state now has more registered Republicans than Democrats. It's never happened before. We're making gains in New Mexico, in North Carolina, in Arizona. We're seeing these trends all across the country, and I'm hopeful that it will translate into an America First victory this November.
Tell us about Iran. What has been going on?
I think one of the messages that the American people should always know when it comes to Iran is that the Iranian people, for the most part, the ones that are living inside of Iran, they love the American people. They're seeking liberty. They're seeking freedom. And they're much different than the Iranian regime, who's been chanting death to America, death to Israel since they took power in 1979. And oh, by the way, funding terrorist proxies all around the world, and especially inside of Israel, like Hamas and Palestinian Jihad and Hezbollah on the northern border. So the bottom line is the Iranian people stand for freedom, and we should stand with them. And the Iranian regime should continue to be isolated. President Biden continues to appease the Iranian regime, and really is a disaster, and it's all on him. He's the one appeasing him, and he's to blame.
And what is your view on Iran and Russia and Ukraine over there? What is going on?
I think whether, Yanky, whether it's Russia invading Ukraine, China potentially invading Taiwan, Iran potentially hitting Israel, it's all happening because President Biden, or as I call him, President Appeasement, is more interested in appeasing terrorists and dictators than being strong with them. President Trump knew peace through strength worked. Sure wish President Trump was still in the White House, that's for sure. If President Trump was in the White House right now, Russia would not be invading Ukraine, Iran would not be enriching uranium at historic levels right now, and China would not be thinking about invading Taiwan. That's the bottom line.
Tell me how the pro-life movement has been growing in the States in the last few years.
Yeah, so I definitely think it's been growing just exponentially. You know, when we had President Trump in office, he's the most pro-life president that we've had in modern history. He didn't just talk about being pro-life. He was the first president to come to the March for Life in D.C. that happens every year. He enacted pro-life policies. He was more of a doer than just a talker about it. He helped defund Planned Parenthood by millions of dollars, and that's something that we're obviously missing right now. Joe Biden, our current president, claims that he is just this devout Catholic, but if there's one thing we know about the Catholic faith, they're very pro-life. And Joe Biden has been revoked communion multiple times for not being pro-life and being pro-choice. So right now, the pro-life fight has turned more into a grassroots level type of activism, and that's something that I'm deeply involved with. My mom, she runs 3 crisis pregnancy centers in North Carolina, and so the fight is very personal to me.
Tell me what brought you to CPAC all the way from Australia.
Well, for the one thing, I was desperate to get out of Australia. Absolutely desperate to get out. But 2, CPAC is just the most amazing event because you're around so many like-minded people. And it's not like we conservatives want an echo chamber. That's what the left does. But because conservatives get attacked constantly from all sides for having conservative opinions, a lot of people feel not comfortable even expressing the fact that they are conservative. So here, when everyone's got the same goals, the same values, the same sort of outlook on life, it's very, very refreshing. So it's a great place to have conversations. It's a great place to learn. I learned so much from all these different speakers that maybe I wouldn't back home. And yeah, it's just great to be here. Really great to be here.
How do you feel about, well, basically America, or at least Florida, being completely open versus Australia is, I don't know what.
Oh my God. Being in Florida, the free state of Florida, has made me realize how completely behind and backward is when it comes to COVID. Backward Australia is when it comes to COVID. It's sort of embarrassing. And the first thing, whenever I meet someone here and I say, oh, I'm from Australia, the reaction is the same. They all go, oh my God, I'm so sorry about what's happened in your country. How are you feeling? Every single person I've met, that when they find out I'm Australian, that's what they say. That's embarrassing. It means that Australia has really lost its reputation on the world stage for a lot of things, and it's not even just the lack of masks and stuff here, but people aren't constantly talking about COVID. The speakers aren't talking about it. We're not talking about it in conversation. Nobody's obsessed with it. No one's terrified of it. It is embarrassing. I want to put my head in my hands with shame. Australia, we need to grow up. We need to move on because it is just obscene what's still going on there.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. Sing it! God bless the USA! From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea. Detroit down to Houston, and New York to LA. There's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Thank you, CPAC.
We're at CPAC speaking to politicians and people and asking them why they're here and a bunch of other questions. If you like what you see, check out rebelcpac.com for more.